Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 3X Value Growth Podcast. My name is Carrie Sauls. I'm a value growth advisor and the author of the bestseller, Multiply Your Business in 3 Steps. Coming to you today, as always, from New Hampshire. And as always, I start with a piece of New Hampshire trivia. Today, I learned that New Hampshire, the present Constitution of New Hampshire, was adopted in 1784, and it was the second oldest constitution in the United States. So it's something that's been around a long time and has stood the test of time, and that's New Hampshire. So I'm joined today by a wonderful advisor that really resonates with me, Charles H. Green of Trusted Advisor Associates. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It really is a pleasure to have you here. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in West Orange, New Jersey today.
West Orange, New Jersey. Okay. Same East Coast, but a little bit farther south.
Same time zone. Right.
Same time zone. Makes a big difference sometimes.
Yes.
Definitely. Charles, I'm grateful that you found time to join us today. For the people listening who don't know you yet, and they should, I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction.
Sure.
Charles H. Green is an author, speaker, and a world expert on trust-based relationships and sales in complex companies, businesses. He's the founder and CEO of Trusted Advisor Associates. He's also the author of Trust-Based Selling and the co-author of the iconic The Trusted Advisor and the Trusted Advisor Fieldbook. Welcome again, Charles.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It really is. So the topic today, that your challenge is to answer 7 questions in 7 minutes, is on the topic of how do you scale trust in your organization?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Number 1, who's your ideal client, Charles?
Typically, it's organizations that have complex products and services that tend to cost a lot of money, have a lot of expertise. Complicated relationships take a while. So big 4 accounting firms, law firms, consulting firms, ad agencies, tech companies, Accentures of the world, Googles, and some smaller firms that also play in those kinds of spaces like private net worth, high net worth fund management, for example. Complicated stuff where trust makes a difference.
So it's more the focus on complicated rather than a particular niche.
Yeah, that's right. We kind of end up across a lot of verticals, but professional services is probably the primary one. And complicated, you're right, that's the key.
Great. Question number 2. So what's the problem that you're trying to solve for these complicated businesses?
It's an interesting question, Carrie, because I think most people don't know how to define the problem. They know that maybe something could be better. They don't even necessarily know something is wrong. They just think, if we had better trust-based relationships with our customers or even within each other, we'd be better off. And they're right. What I find curious is that the people who need it the most do not go looking for it. Low trust organizations with people who are cynical, skeptical, don't trust others, they do not come to find out how to be better at trust. It's those that already have an inkling of how good it can be and how much it can be better. It's like, Mother Teresa was always her toughest critic, right? But same thing here. People who have a glimmer that trust might make it better, they find a way to seek us out. And that's who we end up working with.
That's great. So question number 3 is, what are the typical symptoms? As you said, they have an inkling. So what are the symptoms of the problem they're experiencing, or maybe the symptoms that they're talking about that makes them realize they need you?
Yeah, typical ones. And again, the people who find us already have an inkling, a tendency to blame others, an inability to confront, a culture of passive aggressiveness, and then in a more traditional way, metrics of bad sales closing rates, high cost of sales, low customer satisfaction ratings. But what really triggers it, I think, are managers, leaders, CEOs, whoever, who say, you know what, things could be better. And I'm not exactly sure how, but I've got to believe they could be better. And the interesting thing about trust in a business is, unlike quality, for example, there's no upper limit. There's no ISO 9000 that you can max out at. There's just, if everybody got really good at being trustworthy and at trusting others, I mean, the sky's the limit. I do get to see a few cases where people really work it out, and it's phenomenal. Huge upside. So I think people who have a glimmer of how things could be better, that's enough.
And so question number 4, following up on that, what do you see are the most common mistakes that these owners, these companies are making when they think they can solve the problem themselves?
Right. I think it's usually one thing. People look at the word trust and they read things in the press about trust, and it makes it look like it's a simple problem, and they want to become known for being more trustworthy. They want to score better in trust scores. They want to improve their reputation, their brand. And what they miss is that at root, trust is an interpersonal relationship between two people, one of whom takes a risk to trust another, and the other of whom then either proves trustworthy or not. So there's two actors, and they have different roles to play. The trustor who takes a risk, and the trustee who is or is not trustworthy. So when you simply say, we want to improve trust, that's useless. I mean, the question is, do you have a trustworthiness problem or a trusting problem? And when you break it out and redefine it that way, suddenly you can do something. We have a tool, a self-assessment tool based on a thing called the trust equation. You can rate yourself. How trustworthy am I? And what are the components and how can I improve it? On the trusting side, get more comfortable with risk-taking and how do you do that and so forth. So suddenly it becomes a solvable problem. So the biggest issue is people don't know that. They think you can act directly on trust, and it's not. It's an outcome, not something you work directly on.
Very impressive. Just breaking it down makes it more tangible, that you can see that there are all these elements involved, instead of sticking with the higher level and assuming it's very straightforward and simple, which it isn't.
That's exactly right. And all the usual change management tools of, change the metrics and the incentives, they're kind of wasted until you figure out which problem you're trying to solve, being trustworthy or trusting.
Big difference.
Yeah.
So let's go on to question number 5. What is one valuable free action that our audience members can actually implement now that will start to increase improving on trust, that's going to add value in the business? Can you correlate those?
Yeah, let me give you 2 quick ones. And they are, simple but not easy. One of them is do a better job of listening, and in a particular way. I mean, everybody says do a better job of listening, go take any listening course you want, but with one idea in mind: listening to make the other person feel heard. Not to extract information, not to prove a hypothesis, not to, execute some behavioral steps. Make that other person feel like you get them, you're interested in them, you're curious in them, non-judgmental, but totally focused on making them feel heard. The reason that's so important is it triggers the reciprocal response of them becoming willing to listen to you. And if you're in sales, you know the value of that one. That's one. The other one is take a small risk. Trust never starts unless somebody takes a risk. And if all you do is sitting around looking trustworthy, it's like aggressively waiting for the phone to ring as a sales strategy. It doesn't work. So take a small interpersonal risk. As simple as something like, gee, you look a little nervous. What's going on? I mean, that feels a little bit risky, but that can trigger, again, this reciprocal response. So listen to make people feel heard. Take a small personal risk.
Excellent advice, and something that people can actually put into practice today.
They can do that in 10 minutes. That's right.
That's great. Question number 6. What's one valuable free resource that you can direct our listeners to that will actually help them start to solve this trust problem?
Great. Our core website, which is trustedadvisor.com, ADVISOR.com. At the top of the page on that website, you can take a free self-assessment. What is your trust quotient? How trustworthy are you? And if you take that, it's 20 questions, takes about 5 minutes. That'll teach you a lot. Then you go back to the website, and we've got, 100 articles, 1,000 blog posts, 12 ebooks, 24 short video, 1-minute trust tips. A lot of stuff there. We have a ton of content, and that's all free too.
Terrific. Thank you, Charles. That sounds like a rich place to send people to. TheTrustedAdvisor.com.
Just trustedadvisor.com, not trustedadvisor.com, right?
And my last question, from all of your years of experience in this field, what's the most valuable free tip that you can give business owners, especially in these complex situations?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to top the one about listening and take a small risk. For business owners and leaders, you're always a role model. People are looking up to you, but that's especially true when it comes to trust. If you say we all ought to be doing this with respect to supply chain, okay, fine. If you don't do it, and people say, well, listen to what he says, not what he does. But when it comes to trust, if you don't walk the talk, if you don't do exactly what you're urging other people to do, it ruins the whole thing. You can't trust somebody who lies, who is a hypocrite, who doesn't act on the verbs, on the ideas. So be conscious of the fact that you're a role model every single day for anything you're doing when it comes to trust.
Great advice. It's your integrity that's at stake. Completely.
That's right. Yeah, and that's especially true when it comes to trust.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Charles H. Green, for joining me here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Enjoyed.
Thanks for checking out the 3X Value Growth Podcast. If you like what we're doing here, head over to iTunes and subscribe, leave us a review, or rate us. It's very much appreciated. And if you'd like to learn more about the 3X Value Growth model, go to www.3xvaluegrowth.com/model for the PDF.